Hello there once again. Welcome to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers, we are here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And we welcome Senator Holt in today.
Senator Holt has authored a book that we want to talk to him about, dealing with Oklahoma City. And he's also in the middle of his second legislative session, and I understand doing a fine job. We've had him on before. We look forward to hearing from him again.
He has written a book about Oklahoma City's entrance and experiences in the NBA. And so it'll be fascinating to hear David talk about this as his first-time author. It exposes, really how far Oklahoma City has come and how the NBA played the part in that.
And he does not have, the book does not have a chapter on inadvertent elbows.
We'll be right back on The Verdict.
Positive Tomorrows is a school focused on serving the needs of homeless children, particularly in terms of education. Currently, about half of them are living in local homeless shelters.
I don't know where I live.
It's really important that they see us as a place where they can be a child and not have to worry about adult responsibilities.
My dad says he didn't go to school when he was a kid. I think he's just playing.
As I watch that child grow and change, I watch them be able to take on responsibility.
I would love to teach people.
About 5 years ago, Positive Tomorrows lost a significant part of federal grant funding. Thankfully, Chesapeake stepped forward with some significant funding.
These kids get lost in the crowd because they weren't given an opportunity to figure out who they were.
I'm gonna be a ballerina.
I know that we are making a difference in who they can become.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
The thing that has made the most sense for me is realizing that I am still an educator, and that is what I do at the Chickasaw Nation. I'm Dr. Amanda Cobb-Greetham. I'm a historian, and I'm Chickasaw. The Chickasaw Cultural Center is amazing. It is a very, very special place devoted to the sharing and to the celebration of Chickasaw history and culture. State-of-the-art technology, exhibits that are not like anything I've ever seen. The Spirit Forest is incredible, and you feel as if you have actually just walked into a forest with huge trees all around you. It's timeless, and yet it's sort of also representative of our time depth, to really just sort of reach through time and touch the past. By the end of the exhibits, you really have a sense of Chickasaw cultural and political resurgence and the extent to which we are a healthy, dynamic, and vital tribe today. Chickasaws have always been an inclusive people. This is something for the whole community and for the state of Oklahoma.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're really pleased to welcome back to The Verdict the Honorable David Holt, Senator, District 30, serving in the Oklahoma legislature as we tape this show. As a matter of fact, he was kind enough to come from the legislature over to visit with us. David did his undergraduate work at George Washington University, did his law work at OCU. He is a practicing lawyer. He had service in Washington before he came back to Oklahoma. He was working in the office of the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert, and then also in the White House under President George W. Bush. His most noteworthy accomplishment, however, is to have been Chief of Staff to Mayor Mick Cornett.
Doesn't get any better than that.
That's the top of the mountain. He's about to finish his second session in the legislature, in the Senate. He has had time, or at least taken time, to author a book that we're going to talk about a little bit on this show called Big League City, which does deal with Oklahoma City and the NBA. We're sure pleased to have David back for his second appearance.
That's right. Thank
Welcome
you
to the show.
Thank you.
Your first visit as an author. So big league city, and just to kind of get people up to date, these are partially from notes and interviews that took place while you were working in the mayor's office, and then you just recently wrote it, and here it is, out in time for the playoffs, and I think people are really going to enjoy the book. But get into the background of it. Why did you want to write this book?
Sure. Well, as you both mentioned, I was serving as chief of staff to the mayor when the events of this book happened, which, the book starts in 1889, but we get through the first 100 years pretty quickly, and the majority of the events that took us to where we are today occurred starting when the mayor started visiting Commissioner David Stern of the NBA in 2005, then really through the final and permanent arrival of the Thunder in 2008. I was there for most of that, and kind of, obviously lived it, kept some contemporaneous notes and documents, and then as time went on, I started thinking somebody ought to write a book about this. It really was a heck of a story, and certainly, I believe, the most significant positive development in Oklahoma City's history. And I thought it needed to be told comprehensively in book form. There was certainly a lot of press coverage at the time, but I thought it ought to be brought together, and so I started writing it in 2011, right after I took the bar, Kent, and I had some free time on my hands, so I hammered this out over a few months and published it with Full Circle Press here in Oklahoma City. And as the mayor alluded to, even though I lived some of it and kept some notes, there's certainly research and interviews that I needed to do kind of after the fact to either refresh my memory or maybe connect some dots that I never knew about.
You must have learned some things in the course of your research that you didn't know about in real time when they were happening. What are some of the more interesting things you found out in your research?
Here's an interesting detail the mayor could tell you about, but I didn't know, and of course I wasn't in his office when the Hornets arrived. I came just a couple months after they got here. He had really been somewhat discouraged by a conversation that you had with Commissioner Stern, and you really believed even when the Hornets arrived that we were still, our best we could hope for was to get a National Hockey League team someday. And as much time as we had spent together, I'd really never had that conversation with him. And there for several months, he was still believing that we were just selling Hornets tickets so that Gary Bettman of the National Hockey League would give us a chance.
Well, and part of that was that we wanted to be sensitive to the hurricane and the victims in New Orleans. If at all we let out the idea that we wanted this team to stay, we'd have looked, pretty aggressive,
like poachers.
And I didn't even want to communicate, our best hopes and desires that this team would never leave. But at the same time, Commissioner Stern had told me he didn't have a team for me, and this team had a lease back in New Orleans. There didn't seem to be any logical way this team was going to stay, but we just sold so many tickets they didn't know what to do, so it kind of took care of itself. But yeah, I do remember that period of time, that period of a few weeks when I thought, man, this is our chance to show that we're a big league city, and the NBA is still a long shot. But I bet the NHL would be impressed if we can do well and support this team. Yeah.
The stuff that happened in Seattle, I had followed it probably as closely as anyone had in Oklahoma City, other than those intimately involved. But you still learned a lot in going back and kind of researching it, looking at the articles again, and that part of the book turns into a John Grisham legal thriller. It's a courtroom battle at that point, and as a new attorney, I found it particularly interesting. But I learned a lot there about what happened up there, and probably got a better education about the efforts that the Thunder, then Sonics ownership group put in to try and keep the team in Seattle. Those were legitimate and serious efforts and expensive efforts. They believed they would make a lot of money by keeping the team there and securing an arena deal with the local government. So that story probably wasn't very fairly told because in the past, because it was largely told out of Seattle, who had their own biases. But I think a more accurate and objective version is presented in this book, which may not be popular in Seattle, but I think it's the truth after the research I did.
Did you get a chance to talk to the commissioner?
No, I'm not a journalist. A true journalist would have called everybody possibly involved, but I thought I knew enough to present his role in the story, without even, I did not pursue an interview. But again, that's where this is sort of half memoir and half journalistic effort. I'm still a participant who clearly has a bias, but I did want to present it in an objective way.
You talk from the point of view, though, as someone who grew up in Oklahoma City, with the idea that major league teams were something that other people had, and so to see your city of first of where you grew up, and then your city of choice. Kind of take us through that, what you saw and what impact that makes on your generation.
Yeah. So I'm 33. I am really kind of the last generation of youngish people that will remember what it was like before Major League Sports. You guys obviously do, but people, you know, as a senator, I get the opportunity now to talk to school kids, and I mean, they don't remember the world before the Hornets and the Thunder. And so my generation graduated from high school in '97. Most of the people at my high school, PC North, they went elsewhere after high school or after college. You know, they went to Dallas. The more adventurous went to New York and LA, like your daughter has. Yeah. But that's, you know, that's where you make a career as an actress. But a lot of people who could have stayed here, their line of work was could have been accomplished in Oklahoma City, but they just didn't want to live here because, quite frankly, it was kind of boring. And young people want to be where it's at. They want to be where the action's at. They want to feel a part of something relevant in American culture. And you know, the first part of the book, I do kind of talk about growing up in the 80s in a city that really felt like it was kind of in an alternate universe outside of American pop culture. And to a young person, that mattered a lot. But professional sports was one way. There are other ways, but that is the easiest and quickest way to pop culture relevancy. And that's the, you know, if people are trying to put their finger on what is it that's different, well, it's that we're relevant in American pop culture. And as superficial as that can seem, it's a pretty big deal in American life. There's a lot of money associated with it, and it's a it's a seal of approval when you have a Major League Sports
Lots
team.
of products based on it.
And it demonstrates to the world that your city has the corporate population, you know, just all the sectors of your economy that could possibly sustain something like that. It's a leading indicator, and it's the reason why ever since then, you know, we have retail coming here that had never come here before. We're suddenly on people's radar.
Yeah.
Interesting also that I think one of the things your book illustrates very well is how the Oklahoma City business community teed it up and knocked it out of the ballpark when they had. And remember that the team, the Hornets, came into Oklahoma City, not overnight, but almost overnight. No one had it in their budget to support an NBA team. Not a single company had that as a line item budget. And you could expand that to say, well, not a single citizen had a season ticket hold, you know, in their budget. But somehow, you know, with the credit card or something, they found a way to support that team in an astronomical fashion. I think people underestimate now, looking back, they think it was just pretty impressive. But to do that with months of preparation would have been impressive. To do it in a matter of weeks is astonishing.
And one unsung hero in that early effort is Clay, who certainly is widely recognized now for his role in bringing the Thunder here, but he was also George Shin's, the owner of the Hornets. He was his personal tour guide around town, introducing him to business leaders who would pony up. I mean, you talk about not having it in their budget. We're talking, in many cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars, million-dollar sponsorships. And Clay made that happen for the Hornets. And you know, he had credibility on it because he had been involved in the NBA, which, I mean, what a perfect man at the right time, along with Mayor Cornett. He understood the NBA, and if he hadn't been there, I mean, it would have been a different story, perhaps.
I think the line in your book is, if Clay Bennett didn't exist, we
would have wished he had. Because, I mean, we had somebody in our town that had served on the NBA Board of Governors.
Yeah, that's hard to imagine.
Yeah, without a team. Yeah.
Let's take a break. More from David Holt and his book, Big League City, available at Full Circle Books in Oklahoma City or on their website, fullcirclebooks.com. We'll be right back.
We believe in Bulldogs, Rams, and Spartans. But above all, we believe in students. Oklahoma's oil and natural gas industry is investing millions in education, equipping over 10,000 teachers with the nation's first energy-based curriculum. We're ensuring every Oklahoma student is equipped to lead America's energy future. Oklahoma's oil and natural gas industry, advancing our state, empowering our nation.
When you have something important to communicate, it becomes clear that there's a lot of competition for your audience's attention. So how can your message stand out and actually resonate with your audience? Legal Graphics has the answers. The team at Legal Graphics will work with you to plan, design, and even test your presentation to ensure your message will be heard and remembered. Call Legal Graphics today to schedule an appointment. The readiness is all.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers with State Senator David Holt, who has a new book called Big League City about Oklahoma City's rise to the NBA. You write a book and you hope people will like it, and then as soon as you write it, though, people start commenting on it because authors are kind of open to compliments and criticism. So in the early days here, since this book's been released, what thoughts are you getting back?
Well, first of all, you hope they will buy it. Then you hope they will read it. Then you hope they will like it. It's three things. And really buying it is the most important. But no, it's been great. Yeah, a few people have read it whose opinion I care about. And of course, you were very kind to read it earlier in the process and have said nice things. And yeah, anytime you create anything, obviously, particularly in this case where one is not expecting to make a lot of money, if any, you're doing it purely for the feedback that you get. So when people tell me, I can't wait to buy your book, I always say, I can't wait to get your feedback. You know, I want a review, you know, if for no other reason than I'll find it interesting because I worked on it for so long. But yeah, Vicki Gorley of the Friday paper said it was spellbinding, so you know I think that's a good feedback, and it's a heck of a story, and it's got nothing necessarily to do with my quality as a writer. It is a really interesting story. It's the kind of story where you know how it ends, but you're still kind of on the edge of your seat going, how is this going to end the way it does? Because there's just so many pitfalls along the way.
Well, we know kind of what people in Oklahoma City and Tulsa will think of it. What will people in Seattle think of this book?
Oh, I would like to think the objective ones will say this is a fair book. You know, I certainly mention all the major events. I mention things that maybe weren't our greatest moments here in Oklahoma City, and I mention all the major players in Seattle. But you know, if they're looking for validation of their conspiracy theories, they're not going to find it in this book because I didn't find validation of their conspiracy theories. I found what I felt to be the objective facts, and when and if they get a chance to read it, those folks up there, they may not love it, but I'd like to think they'd think it was fair.
And I guess at some point the book probably will filter into the hands of people in Seattle. So.
Eventually, you know, we'll e-publish it like in 2013, and then they'll have a little bit more accessibility, but they can certainly call Full Circle Books for your viewers in Seattle.
Well, you have to send a copy to Skip Bayless. See what he has to say.
Well, you also have another job, that is state senator in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Talk about the legislative session. And this show is a little bit dated, so we're taping it a few weeks before it's going to actually air. But what can you tell us about the session in general?
Well, you know, this is the second year now of Republican rule in Oklahoma, and but I don't think it's been, for better or for worse, revolutionary. You know, I don't think anyone should feel that we've moved too fast for them, if depending on your perspective. But we have certainly made some changes. We've been, I think, as pro-business as any legislature has ever been. You know, workers' comp and tort reform, the most significant in our state's history. And you know, this year probably the biggest topic has been tax cuts, which I think fulfills Republicans' long-time promise to, you know, shrink government and give money back to the taxpayers. We want to change the government from the one we inherited after 100 years. I think that's fair, and I think that's what people should have expected when they elected Republicans. So we're working on that, but you know, it's a hard road to hoe. You don't turn it all over overnight, and maybe you shouldn't. I mean, maybe you need to be a little more incremental.
And how's the revenue side?
Oh, it's obviously better, and you know, you're on the tip of the spear as a mayor. You see those sales tax receipts every month. better than it has been. Still not back to where it was at one time. So we shall see. But there's obviously a theory that we're doing the right things to grow our long-term economy with these pro-business initiatives. Frankly, with tax cuts. I mean, if we cut the taxes a little bit, we may end up with more money. That's been our experience in Oklahoma in the last 10 years. When we cut the income tax, we ended up with more revenues. I know that's counterintuitive, but that's the economic theory that's been borne out here. So I think in the long term we'll continue to do well, and obviously Oklahoma City's been doing as well as anybody in the country already.
What items would you list or talk about that are not in the big three, like workers' comp, tax cuts, tort reform? We always hear those, and the list stops.
Yeah.
But there are bound to be other things that you and the leadership are interested in.
Sure.
And want to try to accomplish that maybe they haven't surfaced yet.
Well, big one for me that has certainly surfaced for me and the mayor has to deal with every day is union issues. The local government unions have been given all their power by the state government. So you look at places like Wisconsin and they have these big fights over state unions. We don't really have state unions. We have local unions. But he can't change the rules of the road for them. Yeah. We can. We're the only ones who can. We created the powers that they have, and a lot of those issues are breaking cities. The unions are very statutorily powerful. In fact, Oklahoma, people will find this hard to believe, but a nonpartisan think tank in Washington last year said Oklahoma was the most anti-taxpayer state in the entire southern United States as far as government union laws go. People like the mayor have to deal with that every day, are well aware of that. But we have a very pro-union statute book as far as the government unions go, and we need to, quite frankly, I think, tilt that back towards the taxpayer. Every budget power that a union has is one that they've, quite frankly, taken away from the taxpayer. Budget power is finite, and that's something we have to keep working on. And
in November, there will be new results about Republicans and Democrats. How do you think that will shake out?
I believe Republicans in the Senate, if we held all the seats we currently have, we've already clinched 2 more, I believe, as we sit here, just by virtue of the fact that Democrats didn't even file in a couple of seats that they currently hold. So in the Senate, the breakdown as we sit here is 32 to 16, 2/3 majority, but we'll probably have 34, 35 Republicans. And however you feel about him, President Obama will be on the ballot, and he is mathematically not very popular here, and that will benefit local races too. And in the House, they'll probably pick up some seats too. So as overwhelming as it seemed in 2010 for Republicans in Oklahoma, it will only increase. It's almost assured that the numbers will increase in 2012.
All right. Next couple of years for David Holt.
We'll just keep serving the people of Northwest Oklahoma City, Bethany, War Acres, and the Village in the Senate, and do it. I'm enjoying it and want to keep doing it. I don't think I'll be writing any more books. This was a fun exercise, but it's a lot of work. It's a tough hobby to have, and we've got my wife Rachel and I have got 2 beautiful kids, George and Margaret, and I'll be glad that maybe I can spend my late nights with them instead of this book. But it's been fun, and I've enjoyed it.
The name of the book is Big League City: Oklahoma City's Rise to the NBA. Available at Full Circle Books. Congratulations on the book, David, and I hope a lot of people get out and enjoy this story. As you mentioned, a lot of things behind the scene that a lot of people weren't aware of at the time. Mm-hmm. All right.
Thank you. You hear it first on The Verdict.
Thanks for having me.
Kent and I'll have a final word when we get back.
In Oklahoma, we enjoy a high quality of life due to good, well-paying jobs. Commercial real estate professionals play a significant role in bringing new businesses and investment to Oklahoma. The commercial real estate community has come together to market Oklahoma's commercial properties nationwide through a free public website, okcommercialproperty.com. We are invested in keeping Oklahoma strong and growing because economic development ensures quality of life.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
You have children coming from a different lifestyle, different mindset. You have to open your arms and really do what you have to do to have that child become a part of your family. And if it's more patience, that's what you do. Kids gotta know they can trust you. And that's what we try to do with these kids.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers, and our guest for the show was State Senator David Holt and his new book.
Well, a very interesting show. David, of course, is always a great guest, but then he's doing more fine work at the Senate. It will be very interesting to get a chance to read what he said about what he remembers and lived about that experience.
Mm-hmm. And a couple of websites to draw your attention to. First of all, more information on David's book at bigleaguecitybook.com. That's bigleaguecitybook.com. You can get more information about David and his Senate career at oksenate.gov. And one more website that I think people ought to draw attention to is theverdict.tv. That's our website, theverdict.tv. You know, Kent, when I was reading David's book, and he was nice enough to allow me to kind of review it while it was still in the writing stages, is, you know, during the time in which the team was trying to be extracted from Seattle, in other words, after the relocation announcement had been announced by the ownership group, and they had given up on the idea that Seattle would fund some sort of an arena. I had forgotten how many twists and turns remained in the story. And I think if David's book had not been written, I think most of that would have gotten lost. And I think a lot of that is very interesting to people who are involved on the legal side and just interested in the legalities of how things like that, people involved in government, and then just basketball fans, you know. So there's a lot of wide interest here.
David referred to that as a point in the book where if you read it, you think there's no way a team will be coming here because of these things.
Mm-hmm. That's right. BigLeagueCityBook.com is the website where you can go once again and get more information. We appreciate David coming on the show. We will see you next week with another edition of The Verdict. We'll see you then.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.